So this is where I've got to with the replacement fuel tank lid, and I cut it and just folded up the straight sections, and then the corners have been added in afterwards, welded from the outside and dressed back, and that's all come out really nicely. So you can see I have a little Sharpie X, and that marks the position that I've chosen, excuse the noise, for the fuel sender. And the fuel sender is sitting over on the bench. These are the generic Chinese senders. They work really nicely. They're nice and linear, unlike a lot of conventional float and pivot style. What I wanted to achieve on this car is actually a more accurate indication of fuel level, just because I thought I could, really. Now these come in fixed lengths, you can't shorten them. 250mm was a little bit short. This 275 is a little bit long. So it probably would just about work. That's sitting on the bottom of the tank. But if I position it over the well, that's the outlet and the balance pipe position, that works really well. So I went through a session of flange making. So that's the one for this tank, and that'll get threaded M5. I'll first use it with a transfer punch to mark the hole positions, cut the hole in the tank with a hole saw, and that'll get tack welded on the inside of the tank. Now the arrangement on the other tank is slightly different, because I wanted to put a filter on this tank, inside the tank, so that I wouldn't have to have a separate pre-filter for the fuel pump, so that I could just mount a pump and filter in their original Lotus style positions and not have to have a filter higher up in the engine bay, because it's probably actually much easier to service from underneath. Although you've got to lift the vehicle, potentially that area is actually pretty easy to get to. So I got the hole saw out and cut the hole in the top of the tank, and well, dropper lighting, and you can see that, like the other tank, it's in pretty reasonable condition. And lo and behold, what did I find in the tank? I found that Lotus had had the same idea, and they had this filter that pushes down onto the top of the threaded boss for the outlet union. Now that's too tall to work with the fuel sender, and yes, I'm using two fuel senders. There are a number of reasons for that that I'm not going into here. It'll possibly be the subject of a future video, but one of the primary reasons is they're not very expensive and I can. So you can see I've got this flange, which is the one the sensor mounts on and goes on the outside of the tank, and another ring up here which is going on the inside of the tank. and it has a split in it, so it can be wound into the tank through the smaller hole. And should I need to, I'm going to do a different sort of shorter squatter fuel filter. There's enough length of thread in the boss that I can have a piece of pipe stub with the 3/8 inch BSP parallel thread and make a filter arrangement that screws down there, which I will be able to remove and clean should that be needed. And through the post this morning came some nitrile gasket with a proper continuous fuel rating. Be aware that although nitrile rubber is generally oil resistant, to be fuel resistant for constant exposure, even to fumes, it needs to be of a higher grade. And you know, this is 300mm square for about £11 delivered, so not particularly expensive. I could have bought a smaller piece, but it wouldn't have saved much money, so I might as well have some gasket material in stock for future use. And I've got this tank propped up on a tub, just because it's an easy way to prop it up, because this tub isn't liquid tight anymore, it has a crack in the bottom. And I've got a stainless steel drain pan underneath. I've got the main balance pipe blocked off with a piece of pipe with a cap in the end, and I've got a little brass cap in there with an O-ring sealing the outlet, and I have this big tub of what was sold. I bought 4 of these. It was being advertised as solvent degreaser, which I was going to run in my parts washer. However, it is not what you would normally think of as solvent degreaser for a parts washer. It is in fact basically a caustic agent which will dissolve grease and is ideal for removing all the old fuel residue for the tank, get that lovely and clean, so that I can use a rust removing agent. I've got some Frost's chelating agent style rust remover, similar in function to Evaporust, but nowhere near the cost. And if need be, I've got some built Hamber Deoxy C crystals which I can mix up to whatever strength I desire, and that's much more cost effective than either of the others and works well. I used to have a tub of it around, but that finally got used up to the point where it was working too slowly. So this tank's going to get a proper clean, the top welded on, and that's all done. This tank will have the cleaning done, same. You can see there's a little bit more surface rust in this tank than the other one possibly, but it's not something I'm at all worried about. It looks really good inside. Now this tank, which is the right hand side tank, did not have a filter in it, because unlike on the S3, which has no separate large bore balance pipe, it just uses the fuel pipe between the 2 tanks. That's teed off and taken to the pump. So they didn't distribute fuel from one tank to the other very fast. So people usually resorted to filling from both sides if they wanted to brim the tanks for a longer trip. But that just had ordinary side draft carburetors, SU style on-demand pump, well actually an SU pump. My car was fitted with an SU style pump rather than an actual pump. But on the turbo cars, whether it be the what we call the G-body cars, the Giugiaro style cars, or the later Stevens, the X180, and then the S4 and so on and so forth, whether they're blow-through carburetors as they are on the original turbo or later injection, you've got a fuel pressure regulator, and the output of the regulator has to return to the tanks. And the way Lotus did it was to take the fuel from the left-hand tank and to return the fuel to the right-hand tank. So therefore the left-hand tank has the filter I showed earlier, and the right-hand tank doesn't need anything. So this tank will be all ready to go once cleaned, and the new top, and the top has had its inlet and vent pipe installed. And then I have to make a filter arrangement for this tank and do the similar cleaning. And then the last job will be to sort out a new mounting system. So just to round out this video, this is the tank after I've used the derusting solution. That came out really nicely. I also used it on the new tank lid. You can see I've started to mark out where the filler neck and vent neck will go. The other pieces are the beginnings of the in-tank pre-filter, and I've got this very fine stainless steel mesh that I'll be using to construct that filter. And that's where we are at the moment. Had to take a break this afternoon to do some grass mowing whilst the cloud cover made it bearable, and packing up for the day, but making progress. Hopefully we'll get some more done soon.